Hello and welcome. This is Enlightened Connections, a space where unseen threads are illuminated between people and spirit, between animals and their humans, and between the everyday and the extraordinary. I'm your host, Lisa Aston Michael, medium, healer, and animal communicator. And I invite you each week to join me as I share conversations and practices that bring light, healing, and connection into your world. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me for this episode. Today I want to talk about something that's so deeply human, something that has probably touched all of us at one point or another. I know it's certainly touched me. It's called Imposter Syndrome. You might know that feeling. You know that quiet voice that says, "You're not really good enough, are you? Who do you think you are to be doing this?" It can creep in just when you're about to step forward into something exciting or meaningful. Or maybe you've been offered an opportunity that feels slightly out of reach, or you've started creating something from the heart, and suddenly self-doubt rises like a wave. So the question I'm exploring today is this: Imposter syndrome, bad boy, or a blessing? Because while it can feel heavy and limiting, I believe that within it lies something incredibly powerful, something that, when understood and transformed, can actually lead us closer to our authenticity and our purpose. So where does this come from? Imposter syndrome often begins long before we realise it. For many of us, it can trace its roots back to childhood. Perhaps we were compared to siblings, classmates or friends, praised when we achieved, but quietly dismissed when we fell short. Maybe we were told directly or indirectly that love and approval had to be earned through performance. Or perhaps we were told we didn't know what we were talking about. Or worse, not listened to at all. So we grow up, measuring ourselves through the eyes of others, learning to look outward for validation instead of inward for truth. Over time, that turns into a habit of comparison. We start believing that we're only as good as the reflection we see in someone else's opinion. In school, we might have learned to compete instead of collaborate. In our families, we might have been told to be realistic or not get too big for our boots. Oh, that one rings a bell, doesn't it? These little messages sink in and shape our inner voice. You know that one that whispers, "Don't get ahead of yourself. Someone else is probably doing it better than you are." I know that one. And that voice doesn't stay confined to childhood, does it? I mean, it grows with us, showing up in our work, our relationships, and our dreams. In work, imposter syndrome might sound like, "Oh, I just got lucky," or "They'll find out I don't really know what I'm doing." It can cause us to overwork, to people please, or to hold back from opportunities because of fear of being exposed. Now, in relationships, it might cause us to doubt whether we're lovable or worthy. We might overgive, over-apologise, we might stay small so others feel comfortable. And the worst-case scenario, we may attract narcissists or abusers and remain in those relationships feeling that somehow, some way, it's our fault. And in our dreams, that's where it really hurts. Imposter syndrome can stop us from sharing our gifts, launching our projects, or even daring to believe that our unique way of seeing the world has value. It makes us play it safe, even when something deep inside us longs to soar. Let me share my own personal experience of this little gem. I was a professional musician and music industry administrator for the first half of my life. I also hosted an online radio show for the business that I'd created called House Concerts Australia. I was in the middle of recording another lot of songs for my next album when I had an incident happen that changed the entire path of my life 180 degrees. I was driving my car and I witnessed an accident between a motorcar and two rainbow lorikeets. And one of the birds was unfortunately killed. The other bird, I seemed to just immediately take on its stress, its anxiety, its everything about it, and I wasn't sure what was happening to me. I was later to find out that this was called a spontaneous awakening, and from that day forward, I became an empath for animals, feeling everything that they felt. This inevitably led me to learning about animal Reiki, and I did my grades. And then that inevitably led me to animal communication and continued energy healing modalities. So, look, every single one of us at some time has asked ourselves the question, am I really receiving messages from my animal companion, or am I just imagining it all? If you've experienced that, you are not alone. Even the most seasoned animal communicators occasionally question the source of their insights. This feeling, often called Imposter Syndrome, ta-da, gently creeps in, sowing seeds of doubt just as you're beginning to trust your intuitive connection. It's perfectly natural to question whether the impressions, the feelings, or the images that you're receiving are genuine communication from your animal, or simply your mind at play. We live in a world that often values logic over intuition, so it's understandable that we sometimes second-guess the quiet wisdom that comes from within. But remember, intuition and telepathic communication are as natural as breathing. They're skills that can be remembered, nurtured, and trusted with practice. When I first began deepening my animal communication skills, it was with absolute uncertainty. I can't count how many times I was ready to give up. There were moments when a message felt so subtle, I wondered if I'd made it up. But with each session, especially when clients confirmed details I couldn't possibly have known, my confidence grew. See, Spirit has a beautiful way of nudging us forward when we're offering ourselves in service to others. And we are gently affirmed that our hearts know more than we realise. Here's the truth though, imposter syndrome is not real. It's not a reflection of your abilities, your worth, or even your potential. It's simply a thought pattern, one created by years of conditioning, fear, and comparison. It's like a mirage in the desert. It looks real, it feels real, but the moment you walk towards it with awareness, it starts to fade. What's fascinating is that imposter syndrome doesn't usually visit the unmotivated or the complacent. It shows up for the passionate, the conscientious, the ones who care. It's the byproduct of having high standards, of being deeply self-aware. So if you feel it, take heart. It means you're stretching, growing, and evolving. When I was a professional musician, I made a very conscious choice. I never listened to other people's music, not because I wasn't interested or didn't admire other people, but because I didn't want to be influenced or start comparing myself to what I was hearing, especially when so much of what we hear has been professionally produced, polished, and perfected. I knew that if I started comparing, it would crush me. I'd think, God, they're so good. Why would I even bother? So instead, I focused inward. I wrote, created, and performed from my own feelings, from what wanted to come through me. I stayed connected to my own rhythm, my own music, and my own soul. And that's something I've carried with me into my work today as a medium, healer, and intuitive guide. I don't go looking at what others are doing, not because I don't care, but because I know that comparison dilutes authenticity. So everything I create, whether it's a course, a session, or a talk like this, comes from what I feel inspired to share, not from what others are creating. I trust that what flows through me is enough. So when I say imposter syndrome can be a blessing, I mean that it can be a teacher, a mirror showing us where we still seek external validation and where we can return to self-trust. It's an invitation to remember that our gifts don't come from comparison. They come from connection. They come from Source, from the Creator, from that spark within each of us that no one else can replicate. So, if you suffer from imposter syndrome, consider that you might actually be standing at the threshold of your own authenticity. You're aware enough to question yourself, which means you're also aware enough to grow beyond it. You see, humility and doubt can sometimes live in the same room, but here's the thing. When humility is guided by self-acceptance rather than fear, it becomes wisdom. So how do we overcome imposter syndrome, or at least learn to live in harmony with it? Firstly, stop comparing your chapter to someone else's book. Everyone has their own timing, their own path, their own journey, their own divine blueprint. Try focusing inward. Ask yourself, what feels true for me, rather than what are others doing? It's really important to acknowledge your wins. Write them down, speak them out aloud, and let your body feel what success means to you. However small you think it is, a win is a win, and those little wins build and build and build. It's also exceptionally important to stay connected to your purpose. When you remember why you do what you do, self-doubt will lose its grip. And finally, be kind to yourself. You're human. You're learning and growing like everyone else. You don't need to earn worthiness. You already are worthy. So, my closing thoughts are this. Maybe imposter syndrome isn't such a bad boy after all. Maybe it's a misunderstood friend, reminding us to pause, to breathe, to reconnect with what's real. It teaches us to stop looking outward for our identity and to start looking inward for truth. If you've ever felt like an imposter, I want you to know this. You are not faking it. You are becoming it. You're learning to step into the fullness of who you are. And when you create, love, or serve from that place, purely, uniquely, authentically, you become a channel for something far greater than comparison could ever offer. So next time imposter syndrome shows up, smile at it and say, hey, thank you for reminding me that I'm still growing. Then gently but firmly return to your own light. Because you, and only you, can shine in the way that you do. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for being here and tuning into Enlightened Connections. I truly hope today's episode offered you something to reflect on, expand into, or feel more deeply connected to, whether within yourself or with the animals and spirit world around you. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to the show and share it with someone you feel may benefit from it as well. It's one of the most supportive ways you can help this podcast reach more hearts, more homes, and more animal lovers. And if you'd like to stay connected in between episodes, come join me inside the Enlightened Connections podcast Facebook community. I'd absolutely love to have you there. Until next time, take gentle care, stay connected, and trust the whispers.